All right, well, let's get started here. We're going to talk about Trump's plan on Palestine. Very bizarre stuff happening here, but let's start with this first because I know that for the last couple of weeks, the conversation has been about did Trump and Netanyahu really have a breakup or not? And there's a lot of people that just they want it so bad. Oh, he went off on his own. He did this thing. Well, I think he kind of put it to rest himself when he went on Fox News and literally told us that there was no breakup. Did you guys hear it? Here it is. Here's a clip of him from Trump's own mouth. So we can finally put this to rest. Here we go.
Frustrated at all with Prime Minister Netanyahu?
No, look, he's got a tough situation. You have to remember there was an October 7th that everyone forgets. It was one of the most violent days in the history of the world, not the Middle East, the world. When you look at the tapes, and the tapes are there for everyone to see. So he has that problem. That problem should have never happened. Now, if I were president, that problem wouldn't have happened because Iran had no money. They were stone cold broke.
And of course, you ignore all the funding that Qatar and Israel have given to Hamas when you make that statement. You're going to pretend that never happened.
Wow. Unbelievable. And I kind of almost feel bad for the ones the hopeful ones that were just, you saw them all getting all giddy about he's sticking it to Netanyahu and
giving $25 million.
My bad. I was going to cue that one up. We'll get to that in a second. Yeah, this is, I do feel bad because I know some people really, really want this. And unless they're deliberately misreporting on it, which I don't feel bad for those, but those that were like, he's going to do it. He's going to, oh, did you hear Trump's going to give Palestine his own, he's going to announce the state of Palestine. That's not going to happen. Trump's not doing that. In fact, we got this from NBC News. Now, look, obviously they're not going to give us the full story, but this is at least a reference point to some of the talks that are happening right now that seem to be completely counter to recognizing Palestine as its own state. If you're recognizing Palestine as its own state, Jay, why would this even be in discussion at all? NBC News, breaking. The Trump administration is working on a plan to permanently relocate up to 1 million Palestinians from Gaza Strip to Libya. 5 people with knowledge of the effort told NBC News. This plan is under serious enough consideration that the administration has discussed it with Libya's leadership. 2 people with direct knowledge of the plans and a former U.S. official said. In exchange for the resettling of Palestinians, the administration would potentially release to Libya billions of dollars of funds that the U.S. froze more than a decade ago. Those 3 people said. No final agreement has been reached, and Israel has been kept informed of the administration's discussions, the same 3 sources said. And then this one kind of sticks you hard here. So Bassem Naim, a senior Hamas official, said that Hamas, the U.S. designated terrorist group that had resistance group. I'm sorry, I just meant to correct that. There has run Gaza. Was not aware of any discussions about moving Palestinians to Libya. So they haven't discussed this with Hamas. Palestinians are very rooted in their homeland, very strongly committed to the homeland, and they are ready to fight up to the end and to sacrifice anything to defend their land, their homeland, their families, and the future of their children. As he said in response to this, they're exclusively the only party who have the right to decide for the Palestinians, including Gaza and Gazans, what to do and what not to do. That sounds like a very fair and well-articulated assessment. Of course, the representatives of the Israeli government declined to comment. This was the part I was getting to, Jay. I'm gonna read this last part because this is the sticker here. Libya has been plagued by instability and warring political factions throughout the nearly 14 years since a civil war broke out in the country. And
it just broke out. It just broke out. That's all. It just broke out. Yeah.
And notice the language. It's longtime dictator. Not democratically elected. Oh, okay. Muammar Gaddafi was toppled. I wonder how and when and who funded that.
Libya, it was grassroots. Yeah. It was the grassroots, man. Yeah, the grassroots toppled him.
Yeah, we were just watching from a distance going, oh, I guess the people don't like their dictator over there. Libya is struggling to take care of its current population as 2 rival governments, one in the west led by Abdul Hamid Dabaha, and one of the east led by Gaddafi Haftar, are actively and violently fighting for control. The State Department advises Americans not to travel to Libya due to crime, terrorism, unexploited landmines, civil unrest, kidnapping, and armed conflict.
You know,
So
why wouldn't the Palestinians want to go there? It sounds like the perfect place for them, right?
this sounds like a perfect place for
Mm.
Palestinians to go and
Mhm.
to be treated as equal as human
Mhm.
beings, which is the peace president's mission, and why he's doing the right thing for humanity. This is all backwards. This is literally bizarro world times 1,000. Jay,
Mhm.
what's your take on this move to Libya? Is this just talk, or is this something that's actually being pushed forward right now?
You know, first of all, if you want to talk about irony, Gaddafi was actually one of the boldest leaders in calling out Israel, before he got assassinated by NATO, by the coup that we perpetrated, in that country over there. And now we're talking about relocating Israel's enemies into the former state that we just destabilized. So, I mean, you really couldn't write a more ironic script, than that over there. But the fact that, they haven't spoken about it with Hamas tells me something. It tells me that they're trying to figure out if there's a group in Libya that is powerful enough to somewhat control the country with American backing. And if they can essentially get the winning side of this civil war, which they'll probably feed more, which they will solidify by releasing these funds. If they can get them to accept the Palestinians and participate in the mass relocation, and essentially it tells me that if they get the Libyans to agree to that it's essentially going to be a take it or leave it offer to Hamas, and they're going to say, hey, if you guys don't make this move, we're going to green light Israel to finish this war in the way that you don't want to happen. Because if that wasn't what they were planning, then they would be involving the Palestinians in this process to see if this is an outcome they would like or not. But they know the Palestinians don't want that. They know the Palestinians want to stay right there, are going to decline the completion of this ethnic cleansing because that's their home, that's where they want to stay, and that's what they've been fighting for all this time. So like, to even propose it, is showing you that there is no rift between Israel and America and Trump and Netanyahu. And I mean, they may have minor disagreements, but they both are working towards the overall plan of conquering the Middle East. Now, what that looks like, if that winds up being some form of joint partnership between Israel and Saudi Arabia and some kind of crazy move that we haven't figured out yet, maybe Israel and Turkey or Israel and Saudi Arabia, I don't know how it's going to work. But what I do know is that they want Israel to be in control of that land right there. However, the amount of instability that it's going to set off in the whole region once that happens, because Israel wants to ultimately build their religious temples on top of sites that are sacred to Muslim people right now. So I don't know how this is going to work, to be honest with you, or if it can work. But, the sad truth is, I personally don't see any way that Trump is going to betray the people who have been giving him the most money throughout, his campaign and up throughout his political career, because Trump's entire life tells me that money is his primary concern. He hasn't been someone who's dedicated his life to public service and giving back to the community. And sure, he's done nice things for people here and there. And, I'm sure he's done, some good things. Everyone has done like good things before, but his primary motivator seems to be to expand his own empire, and it would be counter to financial interests to go against Zionist interests at this point. So even though he's not running for another term, some people might assume, oh, he's a wild card because, oh, he doesn't have to get reelected again, so he's free to do what he wants. But guess what? He wants his family to be really rich. He wants to continue to be really rich. And if
Yep.
he starts making big moves against Israel, that's going to threaten his own personal wealth. So when I look at who Trump is, I personally don't see that happening. And all evidence, that I'm seeing points towards them realizing that both Israel and Netanyahu are unpopular. So if they can start rumors within the Trump base that Trump has this secret plan he's working on, and don't worry, if we just hold out a little bit longer, Trump's going to rug pull Israel, and then the Zionists won't know what hit them. Like, that's the goal, because they have to keep MAGA hopeful, they have to keep MAGA engaged, and this is their way of just feeding a little bit of hope to MAGA, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, I think you're right on that. And sorry I had a little technical issue, but yeah, thanks
you're
for
good.
keeping that going. Yeah, man, no, that's a definitely great assessment. And what you're able to do is you're able to understand there's a difference, and people need to understand the difference between a little bit of butting heads versus the plan that's been in place that won't change. And I'm interested when you say, Jay, that this is a setup, that this 1 million moving 1 million Palestinians to Libya kind of is a setup, knowing that they're going to say no to it. And then they can say, look at this, Hamas refused the deal again. That's their whole thing. Look, what are we going to do? They keep refusing deals, which it sounds, I think you're right on that. But my question is, why would they need to set that up when they're already bombing the crap out of them? They're not following any deal. They didn't follow the ceasefire when Trump first got in. They're not following anything. Everything they do, they lie every single time. And so do we even need a setup like this? That's why go through all this effort of saying Trump has this plan.
It's how the history books are going to be written. I think it's about how they picture the history books are going to be written, because they'll be able to say that, yeah, there was a tragedy that happened in Palestine, but we did everything we could to avoid it. It was a bad situation. And unfortunately, this is why it went the way that it went, because Gaza and the Palestinians just said no to every kind offer that we sent their way. And so this is what happened. So, unfortunately, the only way I see the tide shifting on this issue is either a grassroots uprising, nonviolent uprising in America that truly disrupts the status quo, or something changing in the Middle East that really puts Israel on its back foot in terms of the military situation over there between, Turkey, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Israel, between those players. I think that is less likely. I think there is cooperation amongst, people in government at the highest levels over there. If I had to guess, I could picture, as crazy as it sounds, if the economic situation deteriorates over here, which is possible, I could picture Americans getting really pissed off about how much money we're spending on wars overseas as the situation continues to get worse over here.
Yeah. Well, just an example of one of the lies that people don't even realize how bad it is, that they can't even keep their word on this. When Hamas says that Witkoff personally promised to lift Gaza blockade in exchange for Eden Alexander, that was the last hostage, or the American hostage, and the U.S. immediately broke this deal. This is like we just threw it right in the trash, and there's been zero progress in the ceasefire. This is, and this Jeremy Scahill reported on this a couple days ago. This is infuriating. That why do we keep doing this? And I do agree with you. The point as far as how history is going to tell this story, but time and time again, we just see constant lying, cheating, stealing. There's no, how do we even make a deal with how can anyone trust us? And we have the same, by the way, same issue with Putin and Zelensky. If we know that NATO's history is break every deal we make,
why make a deal? Yeah. How can you make a deal? These aren't people that you can partner with and trust unless you have an extraordinary amount of checks and balances in place to make sure it happens. It's a tough situation. And then for the person who isn't closely following the situation, if they see Hamas and the Palestinians declining the deals that we offer without all this backstory, they don't understand like, what's really going on. They think that there is some credibility to what America and Israel are saying about them not wanting peace, because they don't have the full backstory, unfortunately.
Yeah, exactly. And then as far as I have to give a shout out here to Patrick Henningsen, friend of the show. He's down and dirty and shows us that this is, again, breaking agreements, going after military. So he's saying, look at this. This is what they're doing. Once again, another ambulance crew in Gaza. Because you guys heard about the one that was reported a little more widely about a month ago, where they're targeting medical workers that are going in there to do medical work, deliberately targeted by Israel's genocidal military, using American bombs and aircraft in targeted killings of medical workers who are trying to rescue survivors, men, women, children, from the rubble of the previous airstrike, targeting unarmed civilians. This is now an hourly event in Gaza. Here's the video Patrick shared. So this doesn't stop. The lying, cheating, BS, Israel, U.S. funded Israel weaponry constantly going in there and causing this kind of damage against medical workers. Check this out. There's not enough room left in my emotional gut to handle the level of psychopathic, murderous, insane, sociopathic behavior we're watching over and over, and the fact that we keep having to defend it, and we're not allowed to challenge it, and we're anti-Semitic if we have a problem with it, and they're going to arrest us to protect this terrorist organization that we are funding. It's insane.
It's clearly a genocide, because you don't even want medical workers to be able to save the sick and wounded. And what it does is it scares off other potential, volunteers and medical workers who feel bad about what's going on over there and may want to help out. They see this and they probably get terrified too. Like, they probably don't want to put themselves in the line of fire, seeing what's happening to them. So, it could not more clearly be a genocide. And the fact that, Trump is claiming there's a genocide in South Africa, a country with a very high rate of violence, but there's not a genocide in Palestine. And that's a debate. If you want to debate whether or not there's a genocide going on in South Africa, I personally don't think there is, but I'm not saying it's impossible, and I maybe don't have all the evidence. But if you can say that what's happening in Gaza is not a genocide, then you're just not looking at reality. That's all it is, man.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we'll end this segment with a positive note. Even though we know that Trump won't ever officially recognize, it's not Trump, it's the U.S., it's the Western U.S., specifically the U.S., will not recognize Palestine as a state. Guess what Ireland, Norway, and Spain have done? Check this out.
France too.
Ireland, Norway, and Spain are announcing that we recognize the state of Palestine. Each of us will now undertake whatever national steps are necessary to give effect to that decision. And I'm confident that further countries will join us in taking this important step in the coming weeks.
Yeah, they said France is also about to join that list also. From what I hear, it sounds like there's a push within, French political leadership too. So we'll see if that goes forward or not.
And the push comes from the bottom up. These people didn't just wake up this morning and grow a conscience or a heart. That's not how it works. You have to pressure your elected leaders to force them where they have no choice. And so that's the only thing that was going to change our foreign policy and the way we conduct ourselves is that the people themselves have to rise up and force it to
And
happen.
and shout out to Norway. I got to visit there last year, and the people over there are really nice, and I saw a lot of solidarity with Palestine over there. And they have posters everywhere. People are definitely politically conscious over there. So not to say I agree with everything their government does, obviously not, but they take it seriously over there.
Cool, good to hear, man. It's positive. It means we have it's inspiring, to say the least.